Hey, Luna, you there?
Hey!
Hey,
Good
how are
to see
you?
your face, man.
Yeah. Oh, it's amazing to connect. It's really, really good.
Totally.
Yeah. Yeah. I think
Absolutely.
yeah, it's a great way to do this as well. Because as we said just in the text outside, we haven't had that chance to be like, hey, how are you? And what are you about? And do all that and then go live. So this is
Yeah,
like the first time we're connecting from just seeing each other post. So it's
I
really cool. Thank you
know.
so much for making yourself available.
Of course, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah,
Really.
there seems like there's lots of key lessons here, and I'll tell you why I've kind of reached out. So I don't know what you know about me, but I'm from Australia. I'm currently in London at the moment, but I work with several people. So I support 5 people in an intimate level and come into their lives to support them with their thinking, their feeling, behaviors, and habits, etc. So a lot of different things. So what I've been trying to do throughout this show is get an interest because I always see myself as a continual learner. And although I've got my method and the way that I'm working with people, I just want to continuously be able to touch them in a number of different ways. And I've got a number of people I'm supporting around addiction at the moment. And I saw some of your posts and it just stood out to me. It stood out and I connected with you straight away. And then ever since then, time zone's been getting in the way and that's all my bad. But it's awesome because I've just got questions. I want to get to know you. I want to share your story and I just want to have a chat.
Yeah, man. Wonderful. Again, I'm so happy to be here. I'm glad you reached out and
Yeah.
let's do it. Let's dive in.
So where are you at the moment?
I'm actually in Colorado. I'm about 20 miles northeast of Durango.
Okay.
A lake here. You can kind of see it in the
Yeah,
background.
true. Amazing. Yeah. I was in Colorado just recently. Last year I got to go out to Breckenridge. Had my
Oh,
first time that I've ever experienced black ice in my life out there. It was
oh, man,
crazy.
it's scary.
It's scary. Yeah. Hectic.
Oh,
So yeah, this time, and then I went to Boulder, which was really, really awesome. And then I was spending some time in Denver too. But this time I just went into Denver and I just walked away going, whoa, that was like one of the coolest cities. Like London, where I'm at the moment, is cool, but Denver's probably a bit cooler, I think. Like there's certain things about the city and certain things about Colorado, which I'm obviously a big fan of. It's awesome as a patient to be able to get medicinal cannabis legally where it's
totally.
everywhere. And you see how they're leading the world. Like you see people are friendly, people are conscious about, it's generalizations, I get it. But my experience, my take home was that, people have switched on to health and it's showing in terms of, their happiness, their kindness, the availability of healthy food, the availability of clean, and yeah, I'm not sure. What is that? Does that resonate with you?
It does actually. It resonates with me a lot. Yeah, I was just in Boulder visiting my older brother about a month ago, I'd say.
Mm.
And within one block, well, probably 2 blocks, there was like a natural grocers and a Whole Foods and like a couple
Yes.
other natural food stores. I mean, there's a big collection of them in
Mm.
various areas. So it's really nice because it's easily accessible.
Yeah.
Whereas, there's certain pockets, of course, where it's a little
Mm.
harder to get. Like for
Mm.
me, a 30-minute drive into town or whatever, but I'd like
Yeah.
to get away from the hustle and bustle, the combustion
Mm.
of.
Yeah. I know we're going to like dive into your story a little bit more, but just on this topic there, I'm curious where you're at. What are your views on cannabis? Like, what have you seen as being from Colorado, like, and from your personal journey as well? And I don't think it involves cannabis, and I'm sure you're going to share that with us. But I'm interested to hear because, like, we start off and I'm talking about addiction, and then I jump into cannabis, and some people may be like, "Whoa, that's a contradiction." But I don't know. For me, it's not. And I'm curious your experiences and what's that like?
Yeah, thanks for asking. Actually, plant medicine is a big part of my journey in recovery. And I don't particularly use cannabis. I'm not opposed to it. I have friends that it works really well for.
Mm.
And also it's kind of harm reduction in regards to other things out there. So
Yeah.
I'm all for the use of cannabis. I think that it has amazing medicinal qualities.
Mm.
And plants that I have worked with, and this may cause some controversy with some of the listeners, depending, but it's part of my story, so I'm going to share it.
Of
I've
course.
worked with
Please.
some plant medicines. My biggest ones was ayahuasca
Mm.
and San Pedro or Wachuma.
Mm.
Working with those two plants, ayahuasca in particular, was
Mm.
a huge catalyst for me being able to begin my journey of recovery.
Wow. Awesome.
Yeah, and it really, I haven't worked with that medicine actually since I entered my recovery, but it was a catalyst for me to enter recovery. Because, in a nutshell, I'll just share quickly, but in my very first ceremony, this was in Sedona, like in 2015, I would say, and I got hit by a freight train during that ceremony. I didn't go in with the right intentions. I did not prepare myself whatsoever. And I'm going to throw out a big disclaimer here is that, I'm in no way recommending that anyone sit with plant medicine. It's not for everyone. And for those that are intrigued by it, there's a lot of research to do before you go into it, especially with the medicine itself. You want to research and know what you're getting yourself into. It needs to feel right for you. And you need to choose a facilitator that is coming from a place of integrity and experience with this medicine.
Yes.
Really not a place to mess around. It's very powerful. It's very potent. And so I didn't do any of those things. I had an amazing facilitator that had plenty of integrity and experience. It was a beautiful container, but I went in without preparation. I went in with no intentions. And I went in on a spontaneous decision. So it was a last minute decision for me to sit with this plant, which I do not recommend to anybody. However, it's what I needed because during that ceremony, I experienced my very first panic attack. That was the beginning of many panic attacks to follow. And this is when I was still drinking. So after that first ceremony with this medicine, every time I picked up a drink, every time I drank it, I went into a state of panic.
Wow.
And it was almost like ayahuasca had unlocked the door for my higher self to come through and, show me that I was acting out of integrity with myself.
Wow.
With the plants and, with those around me. I'm just telling the story.
No, amazing. And I don't think what I would love to do is drill into that more. And I want to know, what was it like leading up to the point of taking it? Now, there's a lot of information out there at the moment which is this story. And I do see that some form of treatment is going to be like some form of psychedelic treatment, or whether it's psilocybin or ayahuasca or San Pedro, as you mentioned before. I think in a controlled environment, that is going to be the future of where we go with mental health care for sure. But we're going there 100%. But to drill into that moment, what was life like for you before needing to make that decision? So what made you, it was a spontaneous decision, but what was life like in the 24 months leading up to that?
Oh my God. Well, I had reached a point. So to backtrack a bit, I'll begin in 2013. My big sister Trudy, I shared a bit about this in social media recently. But my older sister Trudy, she took her life by suicide. She too had been battling with alcohol addiction for decades, for the majority of her life. And it got to a point where she just, she couldn't do it anymore. And so she had made that choice. After her passing is when things got really bad for me. Now, that was all my choice. In no way, shape, or form am I a victim in my story here. I take full ownership for all the choices that led me to wind up where I did. And at the same time, I'd always had an issue with alcohol, but I was never willing to look at it. I always kind of swept it under the rug. In high school, it was partying on the weekends. Everyone in high school did that. It was, not out of the ordinary for me. And then in college, I started partying more. Well, everyone in college does that. I continued to justify it. And from a cultural perspective and environmental perspective, in the places that I was immersed in, the people I was immersed in spending time with, this was just kind of a norm. But I did take it to another level. I started drinking every night in college.
Okay.
And then after Trudy's passing in 2013, I started drinking every day. And my drinking started in the mornings, and it wouldn't stop until I passed out in the evenings. It got really bad, Chad.
Yeah.
I went deep into this, and it was because, I'd had some traumas, I'd had some experiences that were, unsavory and difficult for me to look at. The thing with alcohol is that it kind of perpetuates these things. You know, alcohol is a depressant. So that's the irony there, is I was drinking to relieve the symptoms of what I was feeling and
cope.
to suppress these emotions when it was only contributing to the problem. And I continued to do that for years. So to answer your question, the 24 months leading up to that night, that ceremony, were horrible. They were, it was a really dark place. And it got darker after that. You know, I really did hit a rock bottom. And the thing with rock bottom is you can always go deeper. You know, it's all a choice. And I chose to just keep digging until I was scared shitless after a dream that I had, and that's another story. But this was following the ceremony, and so I was able to just, you know, wake up in a state of fear. Fear is an excellent motivator. And so that's what it took for me, was to be so scared that I was going to die, because that really is the path I was heading. And that's what it took for me to enter recovery.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't go in on a high horse. I was trembling. I was desperate. I was terrified.
There's so many ways. Thank you so much for sharing all this as well. There's a number of things. I know you said not at all that there was any victim mentality, nothing at all. And I know we're going to get into that. But obviously such a trauma as losing your sister to suicide, there's going to be some sort of spill. And the reason I'm saying that, I think you're already in a position where you know that. But I again still wanted to say that because I think it's something that I want to give to you. But it's also to people who are out there listening at the moment and they've had some sort of tragedy, they've had some sort of trauma, and now they're maybe engaging in some behaviours where they're nodding their head at the moment while we're talking. Because I'm really trying to normalise this situation. I think what you're describing there is how easy it is. It can just get out of hand a little bit. Because, you know, high school, particularly with something such as alcohol, it's so accessible. It's so appropriate in culture. I recall when I was at university, it was like a discussion board on the thread, and I was talking about how alcohol is part of culture, particularly for my country. And this guy abused me. You should be out of university. Why would you be thinking? Like, quite drastic. And I was like, what? And I explained myself. I said, well, how do we celebrate? You know, what does Christmas Day look like? What are we doing? We're drinking. You know, what are we doing at birthdays? We're drinking. What are we doing at weddings and funerals? We're drinking, right? How do we celebrate? We're drinking. And I say, if all these key significant moments or events on our calendar are associated with alcohol, it's part of culture, like, because that's part of what we do. Now, making changes for someone like myself who had a serious health condition, and I needed to make these lifestyle changes. And I'm so curious to get there because I think there's going to be some parallels in our, both our lives after recovery, or whatever we want to call it, right? But I think there's going to be a lot of things that we kind of connect on. But I know for me, when I was trying to make changes to then stop drinking, it was hard. It was very hard because who I was as a guy, who I got brought up in a family, which, in a community where alcohol is so prevalent, to make those decisions is quite challenging, particularly for others. It's a really challenging thing. To get a bit of an indicator in terms of like high school and university, right? How much would you said it was like weekend drinking. How much was that? Like, if you to put a number on it, both nights?
Oh, yeah. Oh, gosh, yeah. Any excuse I had. And honestly, full disclosure, if I could have drinking during the weekdays, I probably would have.
I would have, yeah.
I'm pretty sure that I did here and there, alcohol from my parents' cabinet, and like do the whole, go for the vodka and like put a little bit of water in there, put it back. Sometimes I wonder if, they have no idea that the vodka on their shelf now is just like half water.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, that was high school, and then college, like, I would say just about every night. Yeah.
Well, how often, what was the cycle like of coming to a position of stopping? And what I mean by that is going to that level where there's some thoughts that you kind of should be changing, or there's some thoughts, indicators that it's spilling into different areas of life, and there's an awareness about it, but there's neither the software, there's neither the capacity, or you're neither in the, you're not in the position to then be able to make those changes. But do you remember what some of those, what was it like inside your mind? What were some of those thoughts where you were saying to yourself, geez, things are kind of spiraling? And how did you then, so what were some of those ones that came through, if you recall? Were there any prevalent ones, anything that stands out to you now as it's kind of having some time to sink in? It was like, yes, I remember that. You know what I mean? Like it can kind of come to you.
Oh, yeah.
Curious, yeah. What were they for you?
So for me, often, and this is how it started, was usually the hangover, the morning after, the feelings that I felt during that.
Gotcha.
Hangover.
Yep.
A lot of that was guilt, shame, regret, remorse.
What did it look like? How did those, how did the guilt, how did the shame, how did it come to surface?
How it surfaced was just, and I'm not sure if you've ever experienced this. For me, I experienced this almost every time I drank, waking up the next morning and just the moment that I opened my eyes, just having this heavy weight on my chest because I knew that I did something stupid the night before.
Yeah.
I either hurt somebody, I said something dumb, I was dancing on top of the table, like doing things that were way out of integrity with who I truly am, things I would never do in a clear state of mind. And it was beyond fun because this was a repetitive behavior. This wasn't just every now and then, like letting loose for a bachelorette party or a holiday or whatever. It's one thing if it's once in a while and if you can control it and if you can stop when you want to stop. For me, I would just keep drinking till a point of blackout most of the time.
Wow.
That's how I think. And that's how I started drinking. My very first time that I got drunk was 15 and I ended up blacking out. And that's just how my pattern was. Now, not everyone drinks like that. Most people don't drink like that. And it becomes an issue when you're blacking out.
Yeah.
And you're waking up with these feelings of regret, remorse, shame. The hangover is more than just a headache. It's a whole abundance of negative emotions that kind of paralyzes you. It's difficult to get out of bed when you feel that way. You're not productive the next day. And your responsibilities are then jeopardized. You're not meeting your obligations. You're not showing up fully in your life.
That's amazing. This is like, seriously, this is incredible stuff. Incredible.
Yay.
I love it. How is this for you? I know I'm kind of asking, I don't know if these questions are normal. How's it feeling? How is this?
Oh, it's perfect. It's great. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. And I do appreciate, as I said, we haven't met, and I know that I'm kind of digging pretty deep. So also, if I go too far, please just let me know. But there's just like what you just said then should be in the textbook somewhere. Seriously, that's like the indicators for.
It'll be in the future.
Yes, please. I said on my previous podcast. I spoke to this guy, Benny Wallington. He's the founder of something called 101 Tokens. And so the idea, it's an app, and then you drink, you set a target, the amount of days that you will drink in that period of time. So whether it's a 2-month challenge or 1-month challenge, or you're going to track for the year. And then you just need to say whether it was worth it or not, and then do some journaling about it. And what I get the sense is that would be very important at times to support people, because there's continual awareness about, I'm messing up again. And if there's that pattern, may support it. So I've got something similar that I'm working on for a different section. And when we were chatting, him and I was saying that what I think, when it spills into certain areas, so when it spills into your primary responsibility, which you mentioned as well, so if it spills into your primary responsibility, and whether that's work, study, caring, treatment, just being a good person, whatever that primary responsibility for you at that time, if it spills in and you're not showing up your best, it's a problem. If it's coming into key relationships, so if it's coming into a relationship with your family members, with your lover, with your workmates, with your friends, whoever it is, if it's coming into that relationship, if it's a problem, that's another indicator, problem. And if it's spilling into your sense of self, So how you perceive yourself to be and whether you're acting in accordance to who you believe that you are, that's a massive problem. They're my 3 areas where it's like, hey, you've got to call me. No, not really, but you've got to probably listen to this podcast, and you've got to go do some work on you, and you've got to start understanding how you can kind of make these changes. And I think that is exactly what you're saying there. Like, we say it in a different way, but what you're saying there, so that sense of self, that's the shame. It's these negative emotions that you're feeling, like the shame and the guilt. Key relationships and so seeing it from a similar way, which I thought when I saw, when I've just been following your work, and I will put up your details as well. So I'm sure people will be curious to check you out, because this is absolutely golden.
Oh.
Peers is a huge area of mine, like the network around you. Can you tell me about what did that look like? How long have you been? What do you call it now? Is there a word that you call? Is it being sober, or like? I don't want to like.
Call it recovery.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
All can fall under that. I mean, most of us are in recovery from something. Whether it's addiction or an illness or even a heartbreak or a big life event, traumas. There's all kinds. Recovery is just a big umbrella.
Yes.
That's why I kind of like to just put it under that umbrella, because so much can fall under that.
Awesome. I just love to check in, because I don't want to be using a word that I want to use your word, right? Because it's your meaning, and I want to be able to talk about your experiences in that way. And, to have that moment of recovery as a time frame, tell me about the changes in your peer group from pre-recovery to post-recovery.
Yeah, so pre-recovery, I was a mess, and it took everything I had to just complete daily tasks. When I say daily tasks, I mean as far as just brushing my teeth or, showing up for work. I mean, these took so much energy, which, in a normal day-to-day for a normal person, it's pretty effortless. You're just brushing your teeth, you're showing up to work, you're commuting, you're feeding your dogs, you're taking care of your children. All these things just come naturally. And when I was still active in my addiction and living in a state of constant panic, it took everything I had to just get through one day.
Yeah.
And for me, that was, I had to just take it minute by minute. It got to that point where I literally could not look ahead. I couldn't plan ahead. I couldn't anticipate anything. And I used to have this issue with being present. And this is something that I'm still working on, because I tend to right. Yeah, it's common. And anxiety is kind of what stems from, being unable to be present, and anxiety and worries and depression. Depression, you're living in the past. Anxiety, you're trying to live in the future. So that's kind of, in my experience, where both of those, feelings come from.
Yes.
So for me, undergoing that state of constant panic and not being able to look ahead, not being able to look behind even, I literally had to just stay present.
Yes.
So I learned a lot through that experience, and it just goes to show that things don't happen to us, they happen for us. There's some greater purpose, some personal growth that is, just brewing underneath to bloom and to blossom through whatever experience we're undergoing. So that was my pre-sobriety. And then jump into, when I entered sobriety and recovery, I shared with my catalyst for that, which was plant medicine. And then moving forward, I actually started going to AA meetings. And I jumped and I dived head first into it, because for me, in the beginning of my recovery, I found that extremely helpful to have that level of support and accountability, and, to be able to...
Amazing.
Yeah, to show up and be immersed in a group of people who were going through a lot of similar things that I was on various levels. But to be able to talk openly in a room full of people where I didn't feel judged, I felt more understood. I felt like I could, really open up in this container and receive feedback, and that was what I needed during that time.
Yes.
Now, to be honest, I don't go to as many AA meetings as I used to. I haven't actually been to one in months. And, for me, recovery has various stages, and it's a natural maturation process too. Is that what may have worked for someone in their early recovery, perhaps it's not resonating as well as it used to, and there's always room for growth. And that's why in recovery, I believe that there are several ways to achieve and maintain sobriety rather than just one, which, there are some programs out there that are a little less open to other, recovery modalities and methods. And I personally believe in my experience that it's been very helpful for me to be able to branch out and to experience different ways of recovery, and really find what works for me and what doesn't.
Yes, yes. But isn't that just a reflection of life? Mm-hmm. And I see that in terms of myself. And I know that there was a time when I had a pie chart if I had a pie chart on the wall, 100% of my life was cancer. 100% of my life was consumed by cancer. No joke. It motivated every action. How I thought, how I didn't love. I lacked love because I was just so consumed. What I ate, how I moved, everything. And now it's like 1%. And for me, there's so much other stuff that I've filled it with that there's no room for it anymore. Now that can fluctuate at times. And I know we're talking about different things. But I think there's some overlapping themes just in terms of space. And I guess what you're saying is that like recovery is going to change. And if it doesn't change, the person's probably back, because if they're not changing, they're not growing. So if their strategies, if you just have something now that you're going to do in every single way. Now, I love this because I think there's certain anchors. Now, I believe in and I'm going to ask you this in a little bit, and I know there's just so many points I've been making. But I believe in like the idea of non-negotiables and you need to build your life on foundations. Now, they may or may not change over time. Like you may see someone who at the start of recovery, they went for a morning walk on the beach every day, and 80 years later, they're still doing it, or 60 years later, they're doing it. And that's that anchor in their day, which will stay there. But then there's other behaviors around them, which are going to change and evolve. And if they don't, as I said, they're probably not growing. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. I certainly agree with a lot of that. And there's some key aspects in my experience to add in. So for me, non-negotiables would be every morning I start with meditation. It just is what I need to help clear my mind.
What do you do? What sort of meditation? How do you do it? What does it look like?
Yeah, so at first I was just sitting, and that's how I began. And I realized I had no guidance. I hadn't sat to meditate in years up until just a couple of months ago. It's when I reincorporated into my routine.
Yes.
And so I didn't know what I was doing. I mean, all stuff were just
yes. I was the same. Yeah. Totally. I had this thing where I saw an article. It'd been about 18 months of meditation, and I tried when I first got diagnosed in 2014. I had some visualizations, and I would like record myself talking to myself, and I'd be able to lay there and listen to this guided visualization, right? And that's what I was doing for a period of time, but I never like stuck with it. It didn't get me. I kind of tried it, but it was not something that was like one of these anchors. Anyway, cut a long story short, I've been doing it for 18 months. So the habit's still sticking on a daily basis, but the benefit and the journey of the meditation for me was I was sitting there, and I read an article one day, and it said, there was this quote, and it said, the changing point for me in my life with my meditation was when I noticed that all I'd been doing for the past 18 months was sitting cross-legged on the floor thinking. And I was like, what? It sounds so basic. That's all I was doing. I'll just like get into a little pose, say that I'm meditating to myself, then say that to others, because my ego's like, hey, I'm meditating, guys, and this is the new cool thing, right? Totally ripping myself apart here, but that's obviously what it was about, right? Yeah, I'm meditating, man, but like, I'm just sitting there thinking, and it was that moment where I was like, wow, okay, yeah, I gotta try something new. And I do breath work is something that is like my non-negotiable, and then I've got a meditation where I just sit and I observe. So I love, when I first noticed that when I would breathe, I breathe out the back of my neck, I was like, whoa, I'm there. I'm kind of present, right? And that was my journey getting to the point now where I can disconnect in that amount of time and I'm there. I'm feeling rather than thinking. I'm feeling and I'm noticing. And that's a superpower, right? That's a superpower where we can just stand still from time and just go jink. But for me, my journey, as I said to you, was like years and years and years. One of the key things you said before was like your capacity to stay present. And I'm curious because I know there's a lot of people out there, again, who meditation is buzz. It's going to be coming into healthcare much, 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 much more. It's going to be a standard, you're going to have to be like prescribed it, like in my country now, which I'm very, very, very like excited about and have been for a while, that movement exercise is prescribed to some patients with cancer, which is the way it needs to be. Meditation is going to calm, cannabis is going to calm, like it all needs to be here. And then in like 10 years, we'll know what else it kind of looks like. But what did you do to be able to go, okay, in the past, there's guilt, shame, regret, and in the future, worry and fear? How were you able to be present? Because I know you mentioned it before, and it's something that's said a lot, but I think the key, I think that magic is in that moment where you're like, yeah, so this is what happened for me and this is how I did it. What was it like? How did you become present?
Oh, I haven't become president. This is an ongoing process.
No, I know, but momentarily.
I'm still working on that, man. Oh,
yes,
God.
yes,
So
yes.
what's helping me, though, is acknowledging, where the anxiety is coming from. Is I'm making up all these stories in my head of potential outcomes that 99% of the time are not going to happen. In my experience, none of the outcomes, the stories I play in my head, ever come to fruition, the negative ones, which a lot of that up here between my ears can be very negative at times. I think a lot of us struggle with that. And as far as the feelings that are along with my past, the shame, the regret, the remorse, I still have waves where that'll come in. And I just do my best to breathe through it. You mentioned breath work. Now, I don't have a lot of experience with breath work. I have had some experience with breath work, and every time that I've done breath work, it's been phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal, because that does bring you back to the present moment. And it allows you to achieve this like heightened state. I mean, it's really phenomenal.
It is.
So my meditation that I do in the mornings, I actually listen to a guided meditation, and I do my best to imagine my thoughts just kind of like going by as clouds, rather than being attached to them or labeling them or, clinging on to one and then letting it play out. I just do my best to acknowledge it and let it go by.
Yes. And can I just come in at this point and make an assumption? And that's for people out there listening, like, because they're going to be like, oh, how does she get it to be clouds and then they go away? Like, I guess what you're saying is that that's what you're trying to do, but a lot of the time it's like, oh, I've got to feed the dog and I've got to go and I've got to.
Oh, God, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, God,
and I think that's key for other people to know that that is normal and it's going to occur. Do you know what I mean? Just try to do like a 10-second inhalation and a 10-second exhalation and just see how many thoughts you have. Like,
totally.
Do you know, and it's like, I'm going to do it live. I'm going to do it online. So there's going to be a heightened need and I'm not going to do it, And then they'll be like, hey, are you going to have this after the podcast? And I'll be like, oh, 7, 8, 9, 10, like it's just, yeah.
Oh, dude, totally. Yeah. And I'm glad that you brought that up, because that is the truth of it, is that the most that we can do is just be aware of it.
Yes.
And change it, even for a split second. But the more that we do that, the repetitiveness is what kind of creates those default, reactions to our thoughts. It will become over time more of just a passing, fleeting thought versus something that you become attached to. At least, that's my goal.
Oh, for sure. And I noticed for me, there were moments where I was like, oh, I'm thinking again. It's just like, bro, settle down, And now there's just, like, I just notice and I just come back, notice and come back, notice and come back. But, I'm saying this now, like later on, my mind's just going to be going crazy. 100%.
Oh, yeah.
100%. So meditation is a foundation, which has been super helpful. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, meditation, and then I love riding my bike. It's actually medicine for me, and I've realized the non-negotiable is to be in a place where I can do that year-round. It's always kind of been my thing. So I've got a mountain bike, and living on this lake, I ride around the lake every morning. It's about 14 miles, and that's just a big part of my routine. I'm all about routines. I found that they help me to stay disciplined, because in recovery, that became a word that I just wanted, I chose to own, was
Yes.
discipline. And that actually began the night of my sister's memorial. Actually, my older brother and I were sitting down at a dinner table, and we were talking, and I was drinking. I had been drinking some wine or something. And I was opening up to him, about where I was at during that time. And I'm pretty sure I was still filtering some things. I wasn't being completely honest, because I couldn't be completely honest with myself.
Sure.
He brought up the word discipline. He's like, you should just embody that word for the next year and see what happens.
Wow.
And I didn't. I was not ready to. I wasn't ready to dive deep. I wasn't ready to take ownership for my life. I was not ready to do my work, my inner work. And so that's,
So
I kept
true. That's excellent. Sorry, I'm just, yeah. It's amazing. It's amazing. And all, what I'm thinking at the moment? It's just like, there's clues here for people. Like, there's ways to go about overcoming challenges, however that looks, whether it's health, in health, mental health, whether it's illness, whether it's recovery, what it looks like, there's ways to go about it. Right?
Absolutely. And too, going back to what we were talking about with the different methods and modality of recovery, what works for someone may not work for someone else.
100%,
For example, how I shared that, my recovery, there's kind of like a natural maturation, or maybe maturation isn't even the right word for it, but it's a process. I'm moving through, as I continue to grow, different things work for me now that wouldn't have worked for me then, so it's ever changing. And at the same time, what may work for someone in their early recovery will work for them just as well decades later, and even better, so there's ways to grow within, these certain methods. I'm going to use AA as an example. I know so many people in that program that are benefiting so much and have from day one, and they're decades into it. That's been their program throughout their entire journey of recovery, and they're just rocking it, So it's different for everybody.
Of course. I think, I guess what I was meaning, not saying that there's a set way. I think there's certain themes and areas, then it's just how that looks for the person is obviously, choice. For me to think that or someone out there, I'm going to go to them and say, okay, now you need to, cycle 14 miles. But there's ways to go, hey, movement's probably really important, how that looks for you, because it needs to kind of be in your life. Now, how can we work out what that's going to look like, and how you can learn that you get that return on investment, because there's an investment in your time to get there. So how do we look at what that return is? I listened to something recently and I love it. It was about addictions, and it was that, and there's so many things, right? There's so many things, and I think it's just people to kind of put it together for themselves and be like, okay, that works, and it evolves over time. But this guy was like, there's 3 things that needs to be done, and on a daily basis, it's just like 100% authenticity, which means you need to be honest, right? So you need to be honest. So 100% authenticity. Number 2 is you need to sacrifice the outcome. So that means you need to be honest despite what may occur for number 2. And then number 3, which I love, it's you need to do uncomfortable shit. Now, and that could be an uncomfortable conversation. That could be an uncomfortable journal. That could be pushing out another 20 reps at the gym. That could be sitting in meditation for 20 minutes. That could be writing a forgiveness letter to someone. That could be, do you know what I mean? However it looks, there's like uncomfortable stuff that you need to do on a daily basis.
Absolutely. I love that. I completely agree with all 3 of those things.
Yes. That's awesome. Hey, what about like your friends? The amount of time that you spent with people, and you don't need to go into names here, and if this is too private, it's cool. But I'm just curious about how social life kind of changed pre-recovery to post-recovery.
Yeah, and it's still changing. So pre-recovery, I always had social anxiety. Now, I never realized this fully until I stopped drinking and it all came back. But that was actually a big reason why I started drinking, was because it was like a social lubricant. You know, I was able to
Yes.
be at these parties and be socializing with everyone and not worry about what they thought of me and not worry about, you know, what I thought of myself, like any of that. All of that went away. So it worked well at first until it didn't. So I went from, you know, really being very social, and I you know, life of the party sometimes, and having this level of artificial confidence. And then when I stopped drinking, I realized that, you know, my desire to socialize was not nearly as much as, you know, I had wanted to before. And that was a great deal because of social anxiety. This is something I still struggle with. It's not like it's done. But that was definitely a big aspect of it. So being able to learn to, and as I said, it's still a process, but acknowledging who I am and my authenticity and being able to show up as I am in social settings rather than trying to, you know, filter certain aspects about myself. And because I still catch myself doing that sometimes. And it's so important, you know, back to what you just said. Number one, authenticity. That is so key to be able to really show up fully in the world, because no one has the gifts, the uniqueness that you do as an individual, not another person. You know, and that looks like a lot of things for different people. Our experiences shape who we are. You know, our beliefs, our conditioning, programming through childhood to where we are now. There's so many factors that contribute to that.
Yes.
And so now, you know, I found that, you know, going to AA meetings and whatnot in the beginning, that was kind of a way for me to socialize. And now, you know, I'm a little over 3 years into recovery, and I'm realizing that I'm kind of entering this season where I'm more like introspective, and I don't have a desire to socialize as much as I have in previous times. So I think that there's different seasons, you know, throughout our life where we're more socializing and more drawn to people.
Okay.
We're just okay with being by ourselves and focusing on our own stuff and doing our work, you know?
Yes. Yeah. A big curiosity as you're talking is to get an understanding about urges and cravings, early recovery. What was that like? You know, having that time with yourself, maybe, you know, the need for authenticity with yourself back then, I'm not sure. But for some people I know that even trusting themselves, knowing what they're like it can be a key problem, like a key challenge. How persistent were they? And what is the difference between an urge, or what was the difference for an urge or a crave? And it's a loaded question, but are they still present at all? And if so, how do you do? Sorry, just like 4 questions there.
Oh, no, you're good. Yeah, so no, they're not really still present anymore. In the beginning of my recovery, oh, fuck yes. Like every single day,
Yeah.
everything I had, because it was beyond, you know, a mental aspect. It was more of a habitual default, was to reach for alcohol when I was uncomfortable, which back then was every single day, because now, you know, I was drinking, as I said earlier, to suppress a lot of emotions and to, you know, just to numb. I was drinking to check out, to numb. And so I no longer had that to rely on. I had to sit with my emotions. I had to really just be with what I felt. And that was very difficult for me. So, you know, even in my recovery, it was again, a minute-to-minute thing sometimes. You know, some days were easier than others. Some days it took everything I had to just, you know, not have a drink. And other days, you know, I would be going into bed at night and realize, oh my God, I didn't even think about alcohol.
Wow, that's awesome. That's so good. On the days, I'm sure this would have tried to convince you so much how something that was against who you were and something that was against your decision making, this would have tried to tell you that it could have been okay. It may be different this time, or this could just be once. Is that right or no?
You know, for me, I kind of like skipped right over that part.
Wow, awesome.
That it was a problem. Yeah, there wasn't really, I no longer had gray area. As a dear friend once told me, she was like, you lost your right to gray area. There's no more gray area for you. And I didn't understand what she meant at that time. And now I do, looking back, you know, it was all or nothing. It was black or white. I never could just have one.
And why was that? So how was it black and white? And tell me about that. Tell me about that.
Well, as far as drinking, if I had one drink, I would keep drinking until
Yes.
I was blacked out.
Yeah.
This is how it was for me. And
Sure.
there
And
were
there
some,
wasn't moments that after you made that decision where your mind would be like, you may try it today and it could be different, or maybe,
yeah.
or
Well, it wasn't, I'll try today and it'll be different. I knew the consequences, but I ignored them. So actually, relapse is a part of my story. I've relapsed 3 to 4 times. This was, over 3 years ago. So my first stint of recovery was about 5 months long.
Mhm.
And this will give you an example of the insanity that I had with alcohol. But I had 5 months under my belt. I was living in Sedona. I had an awesome support system. I was going to AA meetings. I had a phenomenal sponsor. But I wasn't, working the program as they say. I started going to less meetings and I wasn't holding myself accountable as much. And I just started to kind of fall into that gray area place.
Mm.
And so one day this story, it's so interesting to look back on. But I used to draw when I was drinking. I loved sketching. And so one night I was bored and I decided, I haven't drawn anything in a while. I think I'd like to do that. And then the next thought, because the two were always
Linked.
combined, yeah, the next thought was maybe I'll go get some wine and then I'll do some sketching. And it was just like that.
Yeah.
It swept up just like that. And so I acted on it. I drove to the liquor store and then I sat in my car in front of the liquor store for about 10 minutes debating this inner battle. It was literally like the
Wow.
little here, like, do it, don't do it, that kind of thing for 10
Yes.
minutes.
Yes.
But then I decided to not go in the liquor store. I turned around, I drove back to my home, and I did this 3 more times, Chad.
Wow.
Back and forth 3 times until
Wow.
finally I just went in. And I didn't just get like a bottle of wine. I got a box of wine and I took it back home. And then that's how I drank for the next several days until I ran out of alcohol and I ran out of money. And again, for me, it was very black and white. There was no in between. It was all or nothing. And that was what my all looked like.
Yeah.
So that was my first relapse. And then I went to work as a wilderness guide in Utah. And so our shifts were each 2 weeks long. And so, we'd be out in the wilderness for 2 weeks and then we'd come back out. And, I stayed sober for the majority of that experience. But then I was reading a certain book during one of my shifts out there. And it was triggering for me because it was talking a lot about, alcohol and partying and this took place back in like the 40s. So it wasn't even like, today's narrative. It was still triggering for me. And so that's another thing I'd like to bring to some listeners' attention is really be careful what you allow into your container because
So good.
especially in early recovery, and for me, that's all it took was just reading a few paragraphs, planting a seed in my mind, like, oh, that actually sounds nice. Now, it wasn't like maybe it'll be different this time. It was, I knew the outcome. I knew the terrible consequences, but I was so involved in my addiction that I was willing to chance that again and again until I no longer could anymore.
Yeah. Wow. So insightful. And so much gratitude for you sharing. I strongly believe this is going to touch a lot of people. I strongly believe that. I'm not just saying it like you're delivering this in such an amazing way. Thank you so much.
I get to say that to all your podcasters.
No.
Thank you.
So you've gone through that place, and that's what I was describing. And that's what I was trying to get at. And I probably didn't articulate it as well as I could have, but it was like that addiction math where there's different things that are triggered or in different responses. What I get, what we're hearing now is, and amazing to you, more power to you, that you're now beyond that stage, right? So you're now at a stage, you're living clean, and recovery is going well. Yeah.
Oh yes, yeah. It's absolutely amazing, and
Yeah.
it keeps getting better. There's still hard days. I'm not going to sugarcoat it and say that. Yeah, no, recovery is so much better than I've ever been in my life. I still have some fucking hard days for sure. However, I have tools now that I can use to work through them. rather than numb it out. In the process,
yes,
the opportunity to feel these experiences and these raw emotions is just priceless, because everything I experience is authentic and it's raw and it's real. And all my reactions to what I experience are authentic, raw, and real. I never wake up with feelings of guilt or shame or remorse. And I've got to tell you, Chad, back when I did, I woke up with those feelings almost every morning. And that was not living. It was merely just, it was at a point where I was just trying to survive every day, my addiction, because, there was no living, there was certainly no thriving. It was just getting through the day. And now I'm at a place where I'm feeling so empowered, so juiced up, so inspired and motivated to, really help others to make a shift in their life, to pursue what sets their soul on fire. And part of that process is to release that which doesn't serve them anymore, that which doesn't serve us anymore.
So good. Yeah. Amazing. And you said before, so I've got someone who wanted to ask you a question, and you kind of just said that yourself. And his question was, what do you do at times of stress, and what do you do when to cope? And what you said before is that you have tools. And what we said is that you've got meditation, you ride your bike 14 miles per day, and then the importance of rituals governing your days. What else comes up? So what else is in that? What else is in the toolbox of yours, which you're willing to share?
Yeah, totally. So I'll just kind of share the foundationals for me, which is, and this is what I learned through meditation, and it's something that you can do throughout the day. You don't need to find, 5-20 minutes to sit, but just, and I'm sure you have experience here, but focusing on your breath, because that is what brings us back to the present moment. That's what allows the anxieties and worries and, the feelings of, depression or whatever you're experiencing to just fall away, because you're focusing on your breath. And another thing that I'll touch on is that for me, having, a nutritious diet helps me so much, because I used to have some really intense mood swings because of what I was putting into my body. So I was doing an excess of sugar and caffeine. And so I would not only experience, withdrawals from some of those, but also, my mood swings were pretty intense at times, because what we put into our body really affects us on the core level. Big time. So for me, it's maintaining my routine every day, which looks like meditation, movement, productivity, making sure that I'm staying up to date on my obligations, and, because then that saves stress later on. And then also just making sure I'm taking care of my body and my mind on core levels. So that with a healthy diet and being really mindful of what you're putting into your body. And diet, to me, that doesn't just mean food, but the way that I see, what we put into our bodies is, our whole container. So what kind of music are you listening to? Is it really intense? Does it kind of put your mind in a state of anxiety? Certain music does that to me. Certain noises do that to me. So sometimes that looks like me finding a quiet place when I really need to just take a moment.
I am going to have to copy that container, and I will reference you in the future, because it's a much better way than I talk about it. I say you've got to be mindful about what you put in your mind, and people are like, whatever, man, but hey, by using something which people can attach to, such as you got to be careful about where you put in the container, it's like a light bulb. It's like, wow, that's way better. Yeah, really good way of looking at it, because it's so true, right? So true.
It is, absolutely. So, everything from food, what you're drinking, caffeine are you consuming a day, how much sugar are you consuming a day?
Yes.
What kind of music you're listening to, and how do you fill your time? If you're just kind of, another way to come out is through a television set, Netflix or something like that. Like, there's certainly times for it, like rainy day Netflix, man, that's super nice at times. Or like if you want to do a date night movie or whatever. But I'm going to speak from experience here. And, my husband and I, this was about up until just a couple months ago. But, before that, we were watching Netflix every single night, Chad. And it was like, what are we doing? I mean, we were literally just numbing out in front of a screen. And it felt horrible. I was having more anxiety than usual. And I kind of lost my zest, you know, because I wasn't feeding my creativity in other ways. I wasn't, you know, upholding a routine. I was numbing out, but in a different way. Certainly better than drinking alcohol, you know, like I was, but yet it was just another way to numb out. It was almost like another addiction. And so actually a couple months ago, my husband and I, we sold all of our well, we had 2 TVs. We sold those, and my husband sold his Xbox and his PlayStation. He wasn't like a huge gamer or anything like that. He would play here and there, but we sold all of our electronics except for our computers.
Yeah.
And he sold his entire movie collection. He'd been carrying around like over 300 movies for years.
Yeah.
So we released all of the distractions that we had in our household. And I got to tell you, I mean, our lifestyle has upgraded so much because now we each have our own routines. We're taking care of ourselves as individuals.
And then there's energy that's created between you both, which you then both vibe on, right? Like I know that sometimes when Rebecca, who I get married to in like 2 weeks, when she's done her, amazing. When she does her, like when she's on and she does her morning meditation and her morning yoga, I already know that there's a better likelihood. I wonder what she's thinking as she hears this. I think I'm being honest. I think it's the case. That sometimes when I'm on working in different time zones, I have to go to sleep a little bit later, and sleep is just something I don't sacrifice. So if I'm doing a session until 1 a.m, I'm like, okay, well, I'm not getting out of bed until I've had my 8 hours. So sometimes we're on a different, but I know that if she's got up in the morning and she's on hers, it's just much easier for me to vibe as well. Because you're right, it's like giving energy to the other as well. And then you support each other. Have you done your yoga today? Okay, cool. Yeah. You know, the best thing I love is doing it together.
Yes.
How important has your husband been for recovery?
Oh God, he is just amazing. And he's actually in recovery himself.
Okay.
Yeah, he just celebrated 8 years, man.
Awesome. Like, good work, mate. Awesome.
Yeah, it's really phenomenal to be able to share that journey together. You know, because
that's cool.
We have so much in common. And we have very similar reactions to different things. And I think a lot of that is just we've been through similar experiences too. But you know, it's really great because we can totally call each other out, you know?
Yeah.
You know, like it's really nice to just have that open, you know, connection and to be able to just like share something that's really vulnerable, you know, healing from addiction or in recovery from anything. As you know, it's a process. So it really makes a difference to have that support. And that's a huge key, is that having that support and accountability by people that want to be there and support you makes all the difference. You know,
it does.
If someone that's, you know, someone's in recovery and there's someone in their life that is not supportive of their recovery, who feels threatened because now they can no longer party together, or, you know, a lot of times we're like reflections for one another. So maybe a person feels threatened because this person is in recovery and it's triggering a lot of their own behaviors, but they're not ready to make those changes yet. So that can create a lot of friction within the relationship. So it's
or they can't get to recovery because they keep on spending time with someone where that fuels that. And the thing that they actually have in common is the use. So the use keeps them together. But apart from that, they may want to go in different directions. But then there's torn to this, well, am I going to see this girl or guy again? Do you know what I mean? Or like, what does it mean? And what does it mean for him? Or what does it mean for her if I then go and do make this, you know, this next step?
Right, yeah, and if that other person just isn't supportive in any way, shape, or form, you may be ready to really take a look at that relationship or friendship and ask yourself, maybe it's time to move on, to move forward.
Yeah.
And friendship, because if it's not serving you, it's going to hold you back.
Yes.
You know? Or
one of my big messages is about culling. You know, in terms, I've got my method that works through a number of different areas, and when we're in, you know, when we're looking at the peer group, and I call it the A team, you know, one of the things about the A team is who's in and who's out. And that's not in a way where you need to tell them and you need to write them a letter, but there's just decisions that you need to do that just to maneuver on in life to go where you need and you feel you want to go. And you need people around you who are going to be your cheerleaders, you know, like, and you're the cheerleader for them as well, because it's reciprocal. It's not just have people so that you fly in front of the pack. Do you know what I mean? It's not like that at all. It's just you want people to believe in you, and you want people to go and do these things, because you're going to have a lot of space to replace, right? Drinking needs to be replaced with something, or you're going to drink.
Yeah. Well, and a lot of there's so much to that we could unpack too. I mean, really, when you get down to it, a lot of, you know, and this is speaking from my experience, and I'm sure that you've heard this term too, but addiction is considered also the opposite of connection. So therefore,
it's so true.
Yeah. So when you have that connection and you have that support, you have, you know, your people, your tribe, or as you say, your A team. I love that.
Yeah.
You know, it takes you up to a whole nother level, because now you have people that are cheering you on. You don't feel hold back. You feel like you can accomplish what you set out to accomplish.
Yeah.
And if that's, you know, as simple as just staying sober today, then hell yes. You know, I certainly know how that feels. I've been there.
Exactly.
You know, that is an accomplishment. And then it just, your accomplishments get larger and larger, you know, throughout your recovery, in my experience, you know, because you feel like you can hope for more. You have your people, they're supporting you. Well, anything is possible.
Yeah.
You know, collaboration and connection goes a long way.
Totally true. Can I ask, what's been some of the best advice? Is there any advice that comes to mind, which has been super helpful for you, and you kind of is rattling through your mind at the moment? What has been really, really helpful advice to get to support you to get to where you are?
And it still rings true today. This is still a major part of my day-to-day, and that is keep choosing the next right thing. Because for me,
awesome.
I still experience anxiety. You know, that's definitely something that I'm still working through. It's not nearly as bad as it used to be.
Keep choosing the next right thing.
Right. And I wish I could take credit for that one, but I can't.
That's really, really good, because it's in your control, isn't it?
Yeah, it's really phenomenal, because when you're starting to feel overwhelmed, and maybe that doesn't take much, or maybe it does, depending on who you are, how you react, and what kind of day you're having. But if you just keep doing the next right thing, rather than trying to think about, you know, the next 5 things, or the next 10 things, or the next day, the next week, month, you know, so on, you just focus on what you're doing now, and then doing the next thing. That's how you're able to accomplish what you set out to accomplish, because you're breaking it down into little steps.
Yeah.
You know, just one thing at a time.
Great. Absolutely great. I'm really, really mindful about time. I know I could ask millions and millions of questions and keep on chatting, but I always like to respect time, and I'm not even sure how long we've been going. I think we're coming up now. I want to know what life looks like for you in 2 years. So 24 months, 2021. What's going on for you in September?
Oh my gosh. There's so many things underway right now that they're in the beginning stages. So I'm not going to share too much, but what I will say is that they are recovery based, and with the intention to help, you know, many people through their own journey of recovery.
Awesome.
So what it's looking like is a ton of magic, man. Like it could be really beautiful. And so right now we're kind of, you know, in the beginning stages of planning and creating. So it's looking like it could be really impactful and helpful for.
Sounds super, super interesting. Really, and excited. Yeah, for sure. I've got something coming out very soon, actually, as well, which I'm pretty happy about.
You want to share about it on here?
Yeah. I got an app that's being developed and launched and gone through testing, etc.
Wow.
Yeah, which is cool. And I use it now on a daily basis, and I've got a few other people at the moment still using it before we launch it out, and it's great. I love it. It's really cool, and I think it's gonna. Yeah, and I've kind of got a few people supporting me with it now. There's 5 of us working on it, so yeah, that's what I'm super excited about. It's called On Tracker. So
okay.
Keeps
Do you have a launch date?
Pardon? No. Well, we're looking at, we're doing some more testing. So it's already been 4 stages of testing. It's kind of started in 14, and it's evolved and evolved and evolved and evolved. The last stage was like digital testing. We brought 100 people on and tested them through some of my content, and now we've added these additional features. And so so it's been a whole process to get it to now, and now we're going to be testing the actual application, which is called On Tracker. And the story is really cool. It's kind of had a number of different name changes, but we had some advice. It was actually last week, I had some advice, and that's why I said leaves clues. Like in terms of getting me to where I am, I think success leaves clues, and that's what I'm trying to learn and just listen from people. And, you know, some of the conversation today I'm going to be using on myself and going to be using with my clients, no doubt. But I also think that, like, in terms of this conversation, there's clues for a lot of people out there. And I think people have got, you know, I think there's a capacity for them to really make some changes, and then to be able to, you know, start or to keep doing that next right thing. I think that's, you know, a big take home for them. But in terms of clues, this guy we went and saw, he's like a marketing guru. He's like, went and spoke to him for a while, we spoke about the concept and everything like that. And he's like, at the end of it, he goes, listen, what you need to do is go back to the people you've already worked with. Go back and look at the clues. Look at the clues. There's something in there that is going to tell you what you need to do. And literally, I was just going through some of the feedback that I get from people that I work with, and on 2 different occasions it was, and you supported to get me back on track, and you got me back on track. And I was there, got a mentor with me, and we're doing this name, and we're looking, and I was just like, got to get on track. And then it's like a thing, it's on tracker. What do you think? And we just started, yeah. So there's like a dual purpose. It's like, it has the stories about, so this way of working has got people back on track, but then there's features and functions in the app which keep people accountable and keep people on track on a daily basis. So we're like, it's on tracker. So that's going to be
amazing. Oh my gosh.
So that's happening that's happening now. And as I said, that's going to be rolling out, and we're looking at a launch in the US for February. So
well, I am looking forward to that.
Yeah. It may come out a little bit earlier, but yeah, it'll most likely, it will be launching.
That's so exciting.
February. Yeah, it is. It's super exciting. We're really, really pumped. It seems like there's a lot of synergies between us, which is cool. I'm going to post this across Instagram, LinkedIn, and YouTube. I don't have a massive audience, but I think what I like to do is have, like, this conversation is going to benefit people, no doubt. What's it been like for you? I know that we haven't met, and I know I've asked some fairly challenging questions, I think. And I just want to make sure that before we leave this conversation that you're okay. This hasn't triggered anything, because I know that talking about it sometimes can. And I think it's really important for me to do this check-in. What has it been like?
Oh, dude, it's been really great. I feel like I've known you for a long time.
Okay, yeah.
Conversation has flowed. And as far as triggers, I don't experience any. And that's, the beauty of being able to work through our emotions and things that come up. And that's the beauty of recovery, because it gives us that opportunity to look at those things. And so whatever emotional charges were present before, they start to lose their charge. Those triggers start to diminish. So that's, it's a good indicator that you're on the right path if you're experiencing less triggers as you go. I really appreciate you asking that. Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's essential.
Mm-hmm.
I think it would be very irresponsible of me to be able to expect that you're going to share in a way that you have, and then me to go, oh, sweet, okay, see you later, thank you, and just not talk to you. Like, it would be, it needs to close. Needs to have closure. And that's why it's so good to hear what your plans are, because the way you're able to articulate what has gone on for you, then to share that in a way that makes sense and that people can attach to is very, very special and unique. Sorry, I needed more water. And I think that it's going to be very, very valuable for other people. And I know that I'm super excited to see where this goes. So I'm looking forward to following the journey. Where do people find you? So people who have listened to this, they've been nodding their heads. Hopefully they've been taking notes, because you've got to continuously do work, right? So hopefully people have been doing this, or they repeat it, share it across their network, please. No, and just make those notes. But where do they come and find you?
So I'm on social media or on Instagram at Wild Recovery. And then I'm also working with an organization called Being True to You. And it's a transformational recovery coaching and also transformational integration service. So, we're really present for individuals that are going through not just addiction or recovery, but transformational experiences as well. So that's beingtruetoyou.com. We actually just launched our coach training this year, which I'm participating in. So I'll have my addiction recovery certification for coaching next year in January, which is really exciting.
Mm-hmm.
My husband's actually taking it too, but we're at pretty full capacity now. However, this will be offered again. So beingtruetoyou.com is the website. It's really phenomenal for those that kind of want to dig a little deeper into the transformational experience through recovery. Cool. And yeah, so really just there and on Instagram are where they can find me.
Awesome. And that page looks amazing. Looks amazing. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I'm going to put up some details and I hope people come and check you out. I'm going to get a glass of water, yeah? Any last words? How would you like to finish up?
Just keep doing the next right thing, one day at a time. And as long as you're doing the best that you can, you're doing perfect.
Amazing.
The thing is that we do the best with what we know. And, as Maya Angelou says, when we know more, then we can do better.
Yeah.
So just keeping that in mind, as we all move forward, is doing the best that we can. And that's true for everyone that you come across. So that's why it's important to also practice compassion, not just with yourself, but with others.
Yes. Amazing. Super grateful for your wisdom and very keen to follow to see how this goes.
Yeah,
amazing.
Thank you so much, Chad. I really
Thank you.
It's been an honor to be on your podcast and I look forward to touching base again in the future.
Amazing. Amazing.